Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little watch right here. This is the Omega Seamaster Aqua Terra Master Chronometer in 38mm size. Very interesting little watch, and one I'm very happy to have on the channel. But actually, first off, before I go any further, I want to thank my buddies over at Lewis Jewelers for loaning this guy my way for review. They sent it over to me. They are my AD for Omega, and they actually could be yours, right? Call DK, tell him Nick sent you. He may be able to help you out with some promotional pricing. But nonetheless, they are a dealer for Omega, Tuda, Breitling, Tag, Seiko. They've been great to me, and hopefully they can be great to you too. But anyways, I want to thank them very much for sending this guy along. But as always, I told them I'm going to give it an honest review. Talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. But yeah, so there you go. Thanks, Lewis Jewelers, for that. Next thing, let's do some size measurement and size comparison. We'll start off with some measurements, and we'll do things in millimeters, because in the watch world, we use units that make sense. So including the crown, we are looking at 41mm here, and we are looking at right around 38mm for the overall width on this guy, because this is the 38mm model. What we look at here in terms of size, we're looking at about 44mm, that is, of lug-to-lug distance, which is actually very slight. This works pretty well on a relatively small wrist. The overall thickness on this guy is right around 12.4mm, so not all that thick, and then the lug width on this guy is unfortunately 19mm. It's not going to show up exactly that way because I'm not super precise with a band in there. But nonetheless, this is a 19mm lug width here. And the overall size of the face is a little bit smaller. We get about 32mm face on this guy. And actually, I do want to do a couple of other size comparisons kind of more directly. First one I want to do a comparison to is actually a watch from my own personal collection. This is an Omega Aqua Terra as well. This is an older model, though, and this is a quartz watch, as you can tell by the fact that this guy is ticking along, and the quartz watch is ticking once per second, right? These are very different watches, and actually, the older model I have is a little bit larger than this 38mm model. But nonetheless, there is that. And then I also want to do it up against the Omega Seamaster Professional 300. This is another one of Omega's lineup, and actually these both have exactly the same movement in them. They are just very different designs, right? And so these are both great watches, frankly. So there is that. Next thing, the reference number for this particular piece is 220-10.38.20.03.001. This is not super informative immediately to humans, but what it does betray is the fact that there are a bunch of variations of this guy. There are actually two sizes of this guy. This is the 38mm. There is also a 41mm version of it, which is nice. And there were lots of other versions of this particular watch with a black indices on white dial, blue indices on white dial. There's a black dial with the regular indices, as you see in here. There are two-tone versions, and then you get versions with straps and rubber and leather and all kinds of different things out there. So there are a bunch of variations of it. And then finally, one thing I want to let you know is that I've had this guy for about 48 hours. I've not, adjusted it to my wrist because I want to keep this fresh for the next owner and whatnot. And so this is not a long-term wear sort of review. This is just getting a chance to see the watch and, play with a little bit in the metal and get a better sense of what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting wristwatch. On the good side, to start off with, this has a very nice bracelet in every way but one. It is a very soft bracelet. What I mean by that is there is a great deal of flexibility in these links here. It is not particularly, it feels very nice wrapped around the wrist, and it doesn't have a lot of rigidity, which I think is actually a very nice thing. You'll also notice that the bracelet itself is rather thin. I'll go ahead and I'll throw a caliper on the link right here, and what we're going to see is this guy comes in around 3mm worth of thickness on the links, which is actually quite nice. This ends up wearing very nicely in that way, generally speaking. It also has screw-down links, so what we see here is these take a flathead head, rather than being like hammer the pin through style links, which is a very nice thing. I appreciate them going this way. And you'll also see that the mid links on this guy are very nicely polished up, right? This is a very dressy kind of thing, but you can see a very nice reflection here, including a Nick Shabazz gem t-shirt available from nickshabazz.com/merch. Anyways, I digress. The polished mid links, though, do make this feel a lot dressier, and that is kind of a nice thing. I appreciate that. Next thing, the movement on this guy is great. I'll kind of pop this guy open and let you see in the back here. And what we're going to see in here is the Omega Master Coaxial 8800 movement. I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit here and get you a closer look. Oh yeah, look at that. That is a nice movement right here. And this is an actual mechanical watch. It is one of their master coaxial mechanical movements using a different escapement than other companies. The coaxial escapement is fundamentally a different thing. But it has all the features you would want. It is a hacking watch, which means that if I pull the crown out, you're going to see that the second hand, here, there we go, the second hand actually stops outright when I pull the crown the rest of the way out, and so I can set the time very precisely. It's a hand-winding movement, meaning that when my crown is in the right position, I'm able to wind this guy rather than just letting it charge using this weight here on the back of it, which will rotate as the watch rotates on my hand and wind the movement up itself. So it's an automatic but hand-winding watch. It is a quick-set date movement, which means that if I take this guy and I pull the crown out to the intermediate position here, there we go. What I'm going to be able to do, because it is currently 11 o'clock during the day rather than 11 o'clock at night, don't use a quick adjust or a quick set date overnight, but I can change the day forward like that, and that means that if I take it off my wrist and it stops running after 55 hours, which is the power reserve, I can get it back into the proper date very, very quickly. So that is a very nice thing. It is also an anti-magnetic movement because it is the master chronometer. That means this has a standard of anti-magnetism, which means that you don't really have to worry about this guy getting magnetized. I've not had that happen once to the exact same movement in my Seamaster Pro in all of the time that I've owned it. And it is just overall, oh, and I'm sorry, it is also master chronometer rated, which means that they are making a strong accuracy guarantee. And in my experience, again, in the Seamaster Pro here, which has the same movement, this is a great movement. I have really appreciated it. I've got a lot of wear on this Seamaster Pro. It is one of my very favorite watches, and it is the same thing in there, and it keeps amazing time. There's been no magnetism, no durability. It's just been a great movement. And so I can very wholeheartedly, even if I've not worn this watch for long, I can recommend the movement inside it quite strongly. It works great. So that's a nice thing. The other thing I got to appreciate is that open case back here, because I'm going to be honest with you, the movement on this guy, it's gorgeous, right? They've done a really nice job of figuring it. You can see the balance wheel in there moving. This is one of the joys of owning a mechanical watch. Let me show you the other side here. One of the joys is just getting in there and seeing it ticking along on a regular basis. It's fascinating, and it's just, there's a lot of fun to it. Right, and so having that open case back is a great thing, and it's something I very much appreciate in the 300 there. Next thing on this guy, the crystal on this, as you see here, is very nice, but it is also very anti-reflective. If we actually compare it to the one that I have that is an older model, which does not have as much anti-reflective, what we see here is that, well, in exactly the same position, this does a lot of reflecting, and this does very little. This means that they've put a bunch of coating on there, and as a result, from more of the angles that you're looking at this guy, you just see the hands. You're not seeing the dial, you're not seeing the crystal, you're not seeing the stuff around you. It is a very nice anti-reflective coating. I appreciate that very much. Actually, while we're looking at the dial, let's look at the dial, which is great. What you see here is a little bit of patterning, right? There's almost like a teak look to it, like a little bit yachty feeling, but nonetheless, it's got a very nice dial, and it is very legible as well, because not only are you able to see all of the nice stuff on there, as well as, by the way, an applied Omega logo, not just the Omega, but actually the words Omega are applied as well, meaning they are actually three-dimensional objects on there. But you also get a great deal of reflectivity here. If we take a look at this, and this is kind of hard to show off, but what you're going to see is different elements of the world actually are reflecting off of the indices of the watch, and it turns out to be great. This makes it much more legible. See, if I kind of hide the light from one of the angles, you're going to see that it's still very possible to find other angles where it reflects, and that'll help you see the time, even if the loom is not charged. And by the way, it is worth noting the loom on this guy is quite decent. I'm going to charge this off camera here with a very bright flashlight. What you're going to see is that on the inside there, every one of the hour hands is loom. I'm sorry, hour indices is loom. There's no loom by the date, but that's okay, because that shows you which side is down, right? As well as the second hand, as well as the minute hand is loomed at this little tip of the arrow there. It's only loomed at the tip of the arrow, but it is loomed at that point. So that is a very nice thing. The loom on this is good, and if it's anything like the loom on my prior generation, which lasts all night, I imagine this is only going to be better. So this is very, very nice loom on this guy. Next thing, I gotta say, the handset on this brings me some joy, right? Because you get the Aero-style handset on there, you get a very nice polishing, and the hands are actually kind of bent over. It's not just a single flat piece of something, but there's actually a little bit of bend. There's a little chisel at the very end there. They've done a really nice job creating hands here that feel very figured and sculpted rather than just stamped out pieces of metal. And so that's a very nice thing. And then finally, I gotta say, I love the size of this. So this is the 38mm model. There is a 41mm variant, and that actually has a slightly larger movement, the 8900 movement, which has an independent hour hand, which is pretty nice. But nonetheless, it is very nice to see that somebody finally told Omega that all men's watches don't need to be huge. Omega is a company that does amazing work, but they do it very big. They do it thick, they do it large and wide and whatnot. And I love seeing them doing something that is a little bit thinner. It's still not thin, but it's a little thinner by Omega standards. This is a very nicely sized piece. And I gotta say, the 38mm movement ended up wearing a lot better for a lot of people than I think other kinds of things. I have a around 6.25, 6.5 inch wrist. What we see here is that this wears right in the middle there. It is a very nice size range. And so this ends up feeling not quite as ginormous as something that's, 41, 42, 43, 44 millimeters. I appreciate that very much. It's also reasonably light as a result. This is with every single link still on there. I'll go ahead and I'll throw this on the scale here. And we're going to see that this guy comes in at around 4.67 ounces generally. And if we compare that to my Seamaster Pro, which is adjusted down to my wrist, we're coming in at 6.04 ounces. This becomes much lighter because you have a lot less case to it. You have a lot less size to it. I really love my Seamaster Pro, but God, do I wish it were this size and a little bit thinner and things like that. So I really do hope that Omega starts shrink-raying more of their models. And by the way, Omega, no, 38mm doesn't count if it's still 14mm freaking deep, okay? Try and thin them out on this dimension too. But anyways, I love the size of this guy. It is much more classic. I think that we're actually heading to a time when smaller is going to become the fashion here. And it's great to see them doing that and offering both variants. So to me, all of that is the good, is that the size is great. It's got a very nice set of hands, a great dial. It's sapphire with really nice anti-reflective coating, a beautiful movement, caliber 8800, which I can vouch for being absolutely great. And it has a very nice bracelet. Pardon me. On the great side, the thing that is probably nicest about the Aqua Terra, I think in a lot of people's daily life, is that it is very, very versatile. This is a watch that can dress very, very much up, right? This particular watch, my other Aqua Terra, which, by the way, spiritually speaking, very, very similar in terms of idea and whatnot, you put this guy on a strap and it feels like a dress watch. It feels super duper high end, and I have no doubt that this would feel exactly the same way. If you put this guy in a nice, leather strap, this is going to feel as dressy as you need in most situations, right? So this feels like a dress watch there, but if you just put this on your wrist, it's not completely out of place. It's just a sporty kind of thing. And it's always going to be a little bit fancy, right? There's no way that this is going to feel like down market, that kind of thing. But honestly, this goes from relatively sporty to very, very dressy, very, very easily. And it just goes very high-end very, very quickly. You can't just, put your diver on a strap and call it a dress watch. That ain't the way this works. But this, you absolutely 100% can. And so I think the versatility of this makes it much more well-suited to being somebody's only watch if they are regularly in dressy situations. If you're always maybe a little bit dressy, a little bit fashionable, and you also have to, go full-on suit and tie half the damn time, this is the one watch you need to wear. This will work in both situations. And it'll even work with a pair of cargo shorts, right? So this is a very versatile watch in a way that relatively few designs out there are. Usually it's very dressy, very sporty, but very seldom do you get things that bridge the gap as well as the Aqua Terra does. And to me, and in my life with my Aqua Terra, that has been what is great. On the bad side, to start with, this is a coaxial movement, more specifically a master coaxial movement, and what that means is that it is an Omega exclusive. They are using the, I believe, Daniel's coaxial escape, and it is very nice. It offers a lot of lubrication, a lot of advantages in terms of lubrication, in terms of accuracy. There's a lot of joy in the coax movement, but they are not going to be cheap about servicing it, and it is going to be much more difficult to get parts for this for an independent shop down the road. Hopefully they'll do the right thing, but from a right-to-repair perspective, as well as long-term durability, that is going to be a concern that you might have for this guy. So be careful about that, if that is something that is very important to you. It is also a 19mm lug width, which... why do you hate us, Omega, really? Because a lot of people have 18mm straps and 20mm straps, but 19 is just in the middle there. I kind of wish they'd gone with a standard size because it would just make it so much easier to dress up and down. In practice, they probably want to sell more of their straps, but still. Guys, no. Next thing. This is a little nitpick here, but it is something you want to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and charge the Loom up again, and we're going to play a little game. Find the minute index. Go ahead and find the minute hand. It's not that hard, right? It's right down there. But unlike in a lot of watches, for instance, where you have a full-on set of pointers, here, I'll use the Seamaster Pro as a comparison here, which itself is not necessarily the most legible thing ever, but what you see here is you have something pointing from the middle to the minute index, whereas on this guy, all you really have is that triangle out there. And so if you're trying to find the time late at night, what you're effectively doing is asking which one of these triangles in the outer rim doesn't belong. And you can do that, but it's just a little bit more cognitive load than something that has a full-on index there. Very, very low in the land of issues here. It's a pretty solid piece, but it is one thing that you want to keep in mind. And then the last thing on the bad front is that the price on this guy is quite high. As it's configured right here, the MSRP is $5,700. If you want to go down to a leather strap, you are looking at $5,400. By the way, you might want to. But anyways, this is a very expensive watch, even relative to Omega's other mainstays. Right now, at the time of filming, the Seamaster 300 Diver is at $5,200, as is the Railmaster, as are a couple of other things. And this is not that far away from the Speedmaster Pro, which is also a master coaxial movement and is very complicated. This feels very high. It's a great watch, but they are very proud of it. And I think the used and the gray markets are aware of that markup, because if you look over there, you're seeing about $1,000 less. So if nothing else, the important thing here is that you probably shouldn't pay full bill retail, right? Talk to your Omega talk to your Omega AD, or talk to mine, talk to Lewis Jewelers. They can probably help you out a little bit and get you closer to a reasonable price. But the MSRP on this guy is very, very high, and I don't particularly love that fact. I think they could have done better price-wise. So to me, all of that is the bad, is that this is a very expensive watch, and you probably shouldn't pay retail for it. It's not the most legible thing overnight. 19 millimeters worth of lug width is a little frustrating, and coax movements will need to be serviced through Omega, although they are quite nice. On the ugly front, there is one ugly issue here, and this is something that you're welcome to chalk up to subjectivity. I am a person who prefers watches on a bracelet. That's just the way that I am wired. It's how I like it. And this is a watch on a bracelet, but it is using a butterfly-style clasp, meaning that it opens on one side and then opens on the other. You can see there's a nice little ceramic detent in here to keep this guy closed. And then it closes the other way. And so that's fine, that's well and good, but the problem is that this doesn't have any form of adjustment. You can remove links, right? And in fact, they've done some token efforts to make this a little better, because they include actually 3 different half links, right? I'm sorry, 4 different half links. So you can have, you see there's well, okay. Technically, that's a half link. That's not actually a removable half link. But anyways, you can shuffle these guys around. You can move half links to one side or the other. And the half links will allow you to get very close to the overall sort of measure. But the thing is, this cannot be adjusted without removing links. On most watches, you're going to get something like, hold on. I have this little guy right here. This is a Tudor Black Bay 36, another really nice, dressy sort of piece in this side of vicinity. But what you see on the side here is there are 3 little holes here, and with a tool you can move the length. You can give yourself a little bit more length. This has no such thing. You need to remove links or add links to get more length. And as a result, what this means is if you're out and about, for instance, and your wrist swells up a little bit, you are kind of up a creek, right? In a perfect world, you get something like this. On the Omega Seamaster 300, you have this little button here, which you can push to get a little bit more bracelet length or a little bit less. And as a result, you get more than a full length worth of adjustment here, which is absolutely great. So, you know, the Seamaster Pro does it profoundly right. This really particularly doesn't. You can't even carry a spring bar tool and do some adjustment. This is very, very low in that way. This is not going to be a major problem if you wear your watch loose around your wrist. If you're one of those people who I don't understand, but by God, shine on you crazy diamonds, who are more than happy to have this, you know, just kind of bouncing up and down on your wrist, this won't bother you at all, right? Because it's going to be roughly the size you want, and it's going to flap around anyways. But if you like, and the other thing I got to comment on is it does result in a very thin clasp, right? The clasp is not meaningfully larger than the bracelet in terms of thickness, as opposed to, for instance, on the Seamaster Pro, Yeah, that's a thick boy. I'll give you that any day of the week. So, you know, but the thing is, from a comfort perspective, as a person who likes a bracelet to fit me well and to fit reasonably tightly, not to move on the wrist, this is the bottom of the barrel. And I know Omega can do better. They do amazing toolless quick adjust clasps. But this to me was just like a, you know, this kills the crab, it's over kind of moment when I saw the butterfly clasp. It's like, okay, well, at least I won't be tempted to buy it, right? This is something that is not great. But this is also a bias for me. I like a bracelet. I like it to fit tightly. So feel free to kind of disregard. And the other thing is, if you like to wear your watch on a strap anyways, then by God, you're going to love this. Because guess what? The strap is like $300 less. So, you know, that's great. It won't be a concern for you. But to me, at least, using these kinds of butterfly clasps without even any attempt to make it quick adjustable, that's ugly. That's just not a great solution. And in 2021, you got to do better than that, right? So, to me, that's what's ugly, the butterfly clasp. Final conclusion, though. This is undoubtedly a very nice watch, with a bracelet that is mostly nice, with a great movement, a really nice display back on it, a sapphire crystal, a great dial, nice hands, great options for size. Here, let me zoom in on the part that's actually attractive here. But anyways, great options for size and an unusually versatile style, which could go very, very well in a bunch of different circumstances here. So, you know, all of that is the great. The movement here is proprietary. It is an in-house movement as well. The lug width on it is a little bit weird. The price is way up there. The clasp is a deal breaker if you need adjustability out in the wild. And you know what? Yeah, that's the biggest issue with it, right? If you think about it, if you don't wear it on a bracelet, that's not an issue. It's not super legible overnight. The lug width is weird. Like, all of my other complaints are not really a big deal. The main thing that's actually going to come up is that price, right? It's beautiful. Excellent movement. I can see why a lot of folks love it, and particularly if you're a touch dressy, this is a good one and done thing, but the question is going to be that price point, right? That price point is way up there, and Omega seems to be getting happier and happier at those high prices, right? They seem to be playing the luxury brand game of, well, let's charge more, maybe they'll buy more, and you know what? It might work for them, but for folks for whom value is any concern, it is important to remind you that you have a lot of choices. I mean, come on, at $5,700, the sky is your oyster. You got all kinds of options here. Because you could get a great 3-watch collection for that much money, right? There are lots of amazing watches that are in that same kind of area. One particular one that I tend to advocate for, actually in the micro brand space, is this guy. This is the Monta Watch Noble, which has in a lot of ways a lot of similarities to the Aqua Terra in kind of style and in sort of approach. It's another one of those watches that can dress up or dress down. This is always going to be a little bit fancier, though. But the important detail here is this is $1,760 versus this guy is $57. That's a lot less money. There's also like Seiko's Presage line, which gives you really nice dressy watches. And again, for the price you would pay for one of those, you can get yourself an amazing diver and have something that does both, right? So there are a lot of different options out there. And heck, you could even buy a 300 diver, the Seamaster Pro 300, which is somehow less than this, costs less than this watch. You could buy that and a very nice dress watch for that kind of money. This is just a lot. The watch is great. The movement is great, but you are going way up the curve of diminishing returns when you go this particular route, right? So ultimately, I guess my feeling is if you just need a nice watch, this is really excellent, especially if you put it on a strap so that the butterfly thing goes away. There's a lot to love about it, and there's really not that much wrong with it. But it is not super strong value. And if you want a bracelet, you'll find that better elsewhere. So I don't know if I'd send you here first if all you're looking for is a nice watch. I mean, it's great. I'm not going to turn you away from it. But at the same time, it's a bunch of cash. But that said, if you are looking at this, you are staring at this watch dial and it is calling to you, saying, oh, wow, that's very pretty. If you are a person who wants this look, this particular kind of thing, if you want the versatility that it provides you of having something that is dressy and relatively sporty all at once, and if you can get a decent price, then honestly, I don't think you would feel awkward terrible about getting one. The thought of picking one up wouldn't cause awkward terror? If you want to watch like this, I think there's an aqueous solution. Anyways, I digress. So I hope that this has been interesting to you. Like I said, it's a very nice watch, and particularly if you're looking on strap, there's a lot to love here. But even still, I really like my Aqua Terra, and it's nice to see that the modern versions, especially in the size range, are not so far off. So hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.